Hello, everyone. My name is Brittany Lewis. I am a professional artist, graphic designer, and tarot deck enthusiast. And Sundays is the day that I work on my dream project, the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. And this week we are picking back up with the Three of Cups. So I'm really excited to be here. I hope you guys are having a great day so far. I hope you guys have had a great week. Today's going to be probably another quick live stream. I did do a little bit of work on our second character in this composition, and we're just going to pick back up where we left off. I think today the goal is going to be to finish up her face, which I worked a little bit on over the course of the week, but I also want to kind of tackle her head wrap. So we're going to get into it. If you're new here, the Cosmic Gateways Tarot is a deck that I started, or a project, I should say, that I started back in 2019. It is a 78 card deck, or will be a 78 card tarot deck, including a guidebook and an optional companion book. So we're just following the journey to completion. If you are new here, there is a whole playlist with a couple of card breakdowns, and I've been trying lately to make a point of breaking down some of the symbolism and some of the other cards that we've created. I have over 40 cards left to do. I am hoping that technology is on our side today, because I already have had a few hiccups. So we're starting this just a little bit late. But without further ado, I don't want to overtalk it. I am going to go ahead and jump right into this picture. So for, if just in case this is your first time joining the Three of Cups, what we have here is a scene that's representing celebration and also initiation. We have our main character in the forefront, a little girl who is coming of age. That is the story that we have created for this particular card. And we're just going to continue to create and reinforce that story by giving our characters meaning and giving them certain lighting and such like that. So yeah, without further ado, so I did go ahead and again work on her face just a bit, because I wanted to make sure that my central character was the light source, or the sun, in this particular image. So think all the planets are revolving around the sun. That's sort of the case in this picture, and she creates a light. So when I go to light my characters, I have to kind of keep that in mind. Now, I don't have my glove today. Typically I am painting with a glove, so I'm hoping that my I'm hoping that my hand glides across the screen. Okay, we're just gonna give it a try. I have not done this without a glove in a very long time, and I have no idea where I placed it. So all right, so I have over to my, let me make sure everything is working here. I have over to my right hand side my layers panel. And within my layers panel, I am able to select all of the layers that we laid the foundation for earlier in this series. And right now, it seems like I'm having a little bit of a technical issue with my pen. I am working on a, there it is. I am working on a Huion pen display. This is a 24 4K model. I also am working within Clip Studio Paint. So anyone who is interested in getting into digital art and you're working from a computer, I would highly recommend Clip Studio. It's super robust program. It's one of those programs where you can do a whole lot in it. Including animations. You could also do comics. It will allow you to lay out like page layouts. I use it primarily for illustration, and I do any and all of my graphic design stuff in other programming. But if you're interested in learning digital artwork, it's definitely a program I highly recommend. Hey, Draw Sketchbook, I hope you're doing well. Hey, everyone. If I missed you in the chat, I hope that you all are having a good day. All right, so in my layers panel, I have selected maiden skin. Because we had already laid down the flats for this particular layer, all I would have to do to make sure that I don't draw outside of this space is to hit Control or Command and then click. And what it will do is create a selection. And that way, anything that I draw outside of this selection won't show up, right? All right, so I want to get rid of that because we don't need it. And what I'm going to do is she has quite a lot of forehead space off to the side, so it looks like we might need to add some hair into this image. So we're just going to brush in the indication that she has a little bit of hair, something like this. We don't have to be super specific or fancier about it or anything like that. We just sort of want to put in the indication that, of course, hair is underneath her head wrap, right? And this will also help to offset some of the other work that we've done. And there's no real rhyme or reason. I don't have a particular hairstyle in mind for her. I just need this indication that there's something going on beneath her head wrap. I think that sort of helps us to tie in Some of the, what we have, we want to reinforce the ideas that she's wearing a head wrap, that she's an actual person, even though this is a person that we've made up. And so, in order to do that, we don't want to leave out, her hair, right? So, in my head wrap, you can see some of my hair peeking through. It's pretty much the same general idea. I'm just going to add nothing too fancy in terms of the indication of an ear. Again, this is not a super important character. By herself, she is a part of a larger whole. And so when we're rendering out our images, meaning when we're completing the illustrations, we want to make sure that we put our focus on the thing that we want our audience to focus on. We don't necessarily want to make everyone else feel like an afterthought, so we do want to give them a bit of care, but we don't necessarily want to make them feel much like an afterthought. Now, I was planning today to give another rundown of the Cosmic Gateway Tarot, but again, I was sort of rushing last minute again and wasn't able to sort of get the information that I needed. But I do want to tell you guys or show you guys about the size. Let's see. I have a couple of decks right here next to me. So I wanted to show you guys a demonstration of the size of this particular deck because it will be bigger than your average tarot deck. And there was no particular rhyme or reason other than I just like that particular size better. And if I'm, going to be creating a custom deck and doing a custom order and things like that, I kind of wanted to get what I wanted, right? And I think the size that I have in mind shuffles really well. I don't have the example next to me, but I do have examples of like what a standard size is. The size that I'm going for is just a little bit bigger than your standard. And again, it's just because I liked it. It was no particular reason other than the fact that I liked it. We'll add her some eyelashes here. Nothing too much. We just, because again, this is going to be on the card, so it's not going to show up super strong on the picture. But we do want to flesh it out, keeping in mind that at some point this might be blown up. All right, so we're just going to continue to move around and add in her highlights. Because again, our light source is her little sister who is somewhat beneath her. So she's going to get a little bit of highlight on certain parts of her body, like so. And we're just going to make our way around. At this point, because we have pretty much all of our decisions made in terms of where her eyes are, where her nose is, where certain muscles and, body parts are, we're just filling in the blanks with the information in terms of shading, in terms of adding light and shadow, and more importantly, just adding detail to her. Again, we don't necessarily want to over render this character because she is a secondary character to our main character. So we just want to, add the information that we need to say that this is a person, and we want our audience to believe that she is a part of this scene. So just picking up colors and things like that from what I've already established, and we're going to smoothen them out where we need to. Smudge and move colors around. And if I want this to be just a little bit smoother, currently I'm working in a brush called Smudgy, which gives me a little bit of striation in my blending. But if I wanted it to be a little bit smoother, I grab my Blend Master Flash, and that is from the artist Eric Anthony. I have a lot of his brushes, a lot of his brushes, as well as a lot of Devin Kurtz's brushes. I like Devin Kurtz's a lot because they're specialty brushes. So like if I needed to draw plants, if I needed to draw like buildings and things like that really quickly, her brushes are great for that. And they're not just for Clip Studio. She also has them for Photoshop, and she has them for Procreate as well. So that is someone I would highly recommend looking into. Let's see. We'll go on and add some more color down to her forearm. Such like this, because the light is going to hit pretty strongly here, and it actually is going to take on a little bit of a pinkish hue. But for right now, until I've decided what I want the highlight to be, I'm going to just give it a generic light color, and then we can come back with the actual highlight color. I'm thinking hot pink, but I'm not real sure, so we'll see if that works a little bit later on down the line. But this will sort of pick up some of that color in her skin. And main thing is that we want the audience to know that our little girl is sort of making the people around her glow. And so in order to reinforce that, we'll lighten up aspects of our character. like so. All right. All right, so I'm going to skip around for now. I'll get back to her hand a little bit later. But what I really want to do is work on her head wrap. So we're going to do that. And I believe that is part of the clothes layer. So just like I selected the skin and had a selection, all I'm going to do is hit control or command and click. And that should give me the selection around all of her clothes. So we're just going to get into, just jump right in. We're going to get into painting her hair wrap. I do have an idea of what I would like to do in terms of pattern. For now, I just want to lay in the lights and shadows, just like I do with skin, just like I did with our grandmother figures clothing, the whole thing. And I am painting on the wrong layer. There we go. Now, because I don't necessarily want to mess up, and I'm also not sure if this is going to work the way I envision it, I'm actually going to do this on a whole new layer. And this will allow me to paint on top. I can always merge it a lot later so that I can do whatever it is that I want to do. If that's experimentation, if I know what I'm doing, I just don't want to mess anything up. I can do all of that on a separate layer, work it out, and then I can merge everything down the line. So in this hair wrap, she's going to have some folds and things like that. So we just kind of want to put those indications in like so. And we can change the size of our brush as we do. And this doesn't have to be perfect because if you're familiar with head wraps, they tend not to be. They are often wrapped in a purpose, right? We want to wrap it around our hair, but they're not super uniform or anything like that. So we want to just lay in the indications of where it may have folded and overlapped. And if I want to clean anything up, I can grab that base layer color like so. And then we can make sure we're adding in all of our detail. So I hope this week you guys had an opportunity to work on something that you absolutely wanted to do. I'm always pro find the time or make the time to do the things that we want to do in life because it's always going to be other stuff to do, right? It's always going to be business to handle. If you're a parent, such as myself, children are always going to be there. We're not always going to be there, but they'll be there. There's always going to be responsibilities. But I certainly hope that you guys have spent some time working on the things that actually make you happy and make you smile. And I hope that you have enjoyed your week this week. I hope you guys have a great week this coming week. My goal is to continue to work on this project and to sort through some of the other projects and things like that I'm working on. And just, keep going. I really would like to have this done by the end of the year in terms of the illustrations. And that way it can go to print, let's say maybe next year. Fingers crossed. Now, before I get too far into that, what I am doing is just sort of adding the indication of shadow, right? So we'll get into smoothing all of this out and adding patterns and things like that. But we do want to keep in mind the same thing that we did with the skin, that her light source is below her. So the top of her head wrap is going to be illuminated in some way. Now, I don't know how far we want our light source to reach. If I'm looking at my grandmother figure compared to the sister figure, the grandmother feels fully illuminated, right? So we can probably keep the top of our head wrap in light, but on the side, we can add shadow just to give it form. It doesn't have to be a deep dark shadow or anything like that. We just want to give our wrap form. We want to have an indication that there is hair again underneath, and then we'll tighten it up as we go. But we do want to keep in mind that there is going to be some sort of shine in this scene. So yeah, I hope that you guys are spending some time working on yourselves, working on the things that you, especially with the political climate, right? There's so much going on, and it's very, very easy to kind of get caught up in sort of the minutia of life that we often neglect ourselves. But take a little time to work on yourself. Take a little time to make sure that you're spending it doing the things that you love to do, if for only a few minutes a day, right? And that will help balance out all the other things that we have going on in our lives, because you cannot pour from an empty cup, right? Make sure that you're feeding yourself emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, right? And then you can go out and save the world if that's your mission, right? All right, so again, I am just adding in some indications of shadow And what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to grab my smudge brush, and this one is called Smudgy, also from Eric Anthony's, my main smudge brush. And I'm just going to blend these colors in a bit. And once I get the head wrap feeling the way that I want it to feel, what I'll do is go ahead and add a pattern. Now, I do have an idea of what pattern I'd like to add. And speaking of head wraps, let me fix mine. But I do have an idea of what I would like to add. So I just want to make sure that my base is solid before we get into that. I want to make sure that all of my folds feel like folds, and then we'll get into adding a little bit of color as we go. Now, as we auto save, because my favorite thing to do while it's auto saving is to show you guys what the Cosmic Gateways Tarot looks like. Again, I have about 42 cards or so to do. I am so in love with this project. I am. This is by far the largest project that I've ever undertaken. I have done children's books, I have done comic books, I've done all kinds of like multi illustration projects, but this by far is the largest. And because it's very personal, it's taught me a whole lot about myself, about my process, about conceptualizing and visual storytelling when it comes to finding new meaning in the cards or finding a new way to express the meanings of the cards. And that part to me is really fun. Sometimes it can be a little overwhelming to say, okay, well, I have a Three of Cups, for example. And typically with the Three of Cups, we have three women dancing and there's a feast around. But how can I articulate that story in a way that gives a little bit of freshness? And so challenging myself to do that has been pretty fun. What I have found, though, in some cases where maybe I didn't do as much research and I'm just sort of going off the cuff of what I think something should look like, there is some sort of discrepancy in terms of like the traditional meanings in certain things and how I've depicted them. But this is my project, right? So I think when we're doing art, you don't have to worry so much about being right. You know what I mean? Or, being absolutely correct. You just want to give forth what it is that you want to see in the world. And so that's sort of been that has been my main sort of focus of doing that. Now it looks like my computer is doing something else wonky. Come on, computer. You guys can't see it, but I do have, it's like a little spinning bubble. As soon as that clears up, then we'll get back to working on our head wrap. So yeah, this project has definitely been a labor of love. I highly recommend if you have something that you want to do and just sort of just do it, right? There's never ever going to be a perfect time to do it. Stuff is always going to come up. That's just how life works. But again, if you are putting forth just a little bit of time, it doesn't even have to be, 12 hours or so a day to do it. Even if it's just 5 minutes a day, every day or every other day, working on something that you absolutely love, you'll be real surprised at how far you can get, right? And the fact that you've started it, that's the main thing. I think we sometimes overthink things because we don't have all of our ducks in a row. Say for instance, you want to do a YouTube channel, and maybe you're feeling like, well, I don't have this equipment or I don't have that equipment, but you have a phone, right? And your phone allows you to record videos, right? Until you can get something better. So you have to sort of take a chance on yourself and bet on yourself and do the things that you absolutely love, or just because you want to. I know sometimes we sort of get tangled up in comparing ourselves to others and comparing our journey to other people, and we'll see people blow up and reach huge successes in their lives. And I know sometimes that can feel like it can feel a little bit intimidating, but everyone has a path, right? And what we don't see in those cases a lot of times in those stories is all of the work, all of the breakdowns, right? All of the things that those people have gone through to get to that point. Now, there are people certainly who are just knocking it out right out the gate, but for the most part, most people don't. For most people, it takes a while to sort of get to the point where reach whatever goal it is that they have in mind, right? But you have to define what success looks like for you, and then from there, it's just a matter of taking baby steps to get there. It doesn't have to happen all at once. It doesn't even have to happen in a linear fashion, right? You can do things, you can stop, come back to it. But so long as you're making small progress is better than no progress at all. So what I'm doing now is just adding in the highlights, right? Again, I want this to be a somewhat hot pink. And because she's wearing red, it's easy for me to incorporate a brighter red color into this head wrap. There are a lot of folds and things going on. We'll go ahead and tighten some of that up as we go. Maybe we will lighten up some of the darkness. We'll just kind of use a different dark color, maybe not as black or dull. So like for instance, go to my base color down here. Let's say I want to use this and want to kind of go over some of this, maybe not as dark as that. Let's go a little bit lighter. There we go. We just tighten things up as we go. And what I'll do here in a moment is I will actually zoom out, because sometimes when we sometimes when we have things too close to us, and that's in life in general. Sometimes when things are too close to us, it's hard to see a way around it. It's hard to see exactly what's going on. So we'll zoom out. But until then, let me go ahead and lighten up some of these shadows, because some of them I don't want as dark as this. So we'll just do something like this, right? And maybe this fold goes a little bit deeper, something like that. Very, very easy. And I like doing things like this because, again, it doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. I'm not modeling it after, any particular reference or anything like that. So there's quite a bit of freedom that can go along with painting something like a head wrap or painting something like fabric folds. You can get creative. You just want to keep in mind that you have a light source and you want to know exactly where that light source is. So I'm actually going to zoom out, but before I do that, I'm checking the other monitor so that I can kind of see what it looks like from a slightly different perspective. Looks pretty good so far. What I am noticing though in her skin as I'm doing this is that her skin, especially in this forehead area, looks a little weird, right? It needs a little bit of shadow, needs a little bit of depth. So what I'm going to do again is select Control on my keyboard, because I'm using a Windows keyboard on a Mac computer. But I hit the Windows button, and then I will click on I click on the um, layer that I want to select, and then I go from there. So something like this, like she needs a little bit of nuance in her head. And what I'm going to do is actually deselect it, and we're going to reshape a few things. So maybe her forehead and her brow isn't quite as pronounced, right? And even though this is based on our sketch, it's totally okay to go in and change things around. And if I wanted to do the same thing with her head wrap, actually, you know what? What I'm going to do is go ahead and merge these two layers. It's actually going to flatten. It's not what we want. So we're going to undo that. There we go. All right. Here we go. All right. So we can kind of take this down a bit, reshape it if we need to. And there are different ways we can do this. We can actually go in and use a transform, which will allow us to transform the whole thing. This works pretty okay. I'm just going to get rid of some of what we don't need, because it is feeling a bit bulky. Do I like that? A little bit. Let's go in a little bit more. Something like this. And you know what I should have did before I did all that? I actually should have did this in a mask. And I think I'm going to go backwards a bit. And I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to add a mask to this layer. Now, a mask will allow me to erase all of this. But if I say I erase too much, I can actually paint it back in. And it will reveal all of the things that we've already added. And as opposed to me just flat out erasing it, right? We want to keep in mind the shape, something like this. And then with her skin, it overlaps a bit. And clean all that up. And I can look at my second monitor, and I can also zoom out a bit, and we'll see how that's looking. Now, it could use a little bit more reshaping. So what I'm going to do is actually duplicate this layer. I think Yep. Because I want to try something out. Now, what I'm going to do is select this again, but I'm only going to select this part, right? So in order to deselect, I'm going to select or choose my selection tool, which is what it's called in Clip Studio. It's also known as a lasso tool in Photoshop. I'm not really sure if it's called a lasso tool in Procreate or not, but it has a similar function where you can select parts of your image. I don't really need to select her outfit here. I'm going to get rid of this mask for now. Yeah. And then what I'm going to do is go to edit and transform. And I'm going to do a mesh transform because that'll give me a little bit more control over how much of the shape I move, right? So I can still have the same indication. It's not quite as flat. Like so. Now I've heard in version 4 of this program, Clip Studio, you can actually create a puppet, which does this, takes the mesh to a slightly new level, right? But for right now, I think this is all we need. I just needed to reshape this till I'm happy with it. Something like that. I think that looks good. All right. Good. All right. So now I'm just going to clean this up some more. And then I think on the side here, in her skin, I want to make sure that we have like a proper lift between the head wrap and her skin. Maybe we have some of her hair peeking out a bit, something like this. And that looks good. All right. So something else I'm noticing with her skin is just sort of how I have her highlight placed. It kind of shapes her face a certain way I don't necessarily find pleasing. So we're going to reshape it a bit. And then what I'm going to do is blend it out some so that the line between the highlight and the sort of where it becomes shadow isn't so harsh. Something like that. And then let's give her a little bit of cheekbone. Just a bit. Take that same blend tool and blend it out. There we go. I like that better. All right. All right. All right. So back to the hair wrap. Now, again, I am going to select this. Actually, you know what? I think I might put this selection on its own layer. Then I can merge it a little bit later. And that way I don't have to go through the process of deselecting everything else. There we go. So now I have her head wrap on a whole nother layer. All right. Okay. So now we can add a little bit of pattern to this. Just a bit, and I'm going to do that, even that on a separate layer, and then I'll merge it a little bit later. I just want to add like some lines to it, nothing too fancy. I do want to select maybe one of these darker colors, something like this, right? And this part to me is a little bit fun because now I get to add some more sort of details and talking points to this, and I think it fleshes it out just a bit more. It makes it feel a little more real. Now, what I will begin to do is as I go through the process of adding the patterns to her head wrap, I will keep in mind that there's, again, a light source, right? So there are going to be lighter areas and darker areas of this. We don't want to interrupt too much of what we have going on. And if it's not quite showing up, then we just make it darker, right? Or lighter, depending on where we are in her head wrap. And there's no real rhyme or reason to this. I just wanted to feel like a head wrap. So I've been thinking about, I know I always throw out something new every week, right? I've actually been thinking about adding another live stream through the week. And this one will be like a study with me, paint with me, so that I'm not necessarily talking through it, but we can just work together, right? I can be painting, you can be doing whatever it is that you do and are awesome at. And just play some nice soothing music. If that's something that you would like to do or watch, let me know. I'm really curious. I'm always for throwing out ideas out there. Maybe have some like lo-fi music or something like that going. I have considered it here recently just because I feel like it would be fun, right? I think it would be fun to do. If that's something that you'd be interested in, please let me know. I have seen some of those before, and I was like, well, you know what, that might be nice. That way we can hold each other accountable for doing the things that we say we're going to do, right? If it's practicing our artwork, if it's writing a book or whatever it is that you're going to be working on, I would love to have you in that space so that we can do it together. All right. And so I'm just going to continue to make my way around this. Hey, draw sketchbook. You said that does sound fun. Okay, right on, right on. I am really considering doing it because I just feel like sometimes you just need to see other people create to motivate us to continue to create or whatever it is. It doesn't even have to be creation. You could be working if you're working from home. You know what I mean? If you just want to listen to some, nice music and watch the next person work, that's totally okay. But I am really considering it because I just think it would be fun. you know? I think it would be a fun idea, and I would love to see you guys more often. See you in the chat. See you guys being productive and hear about some of the things that you're working on. Um, and it won't be me talking, right? It'll be some good music or something like that. So we are auto saving. I see that we have a couple new people in the stream. So again, I'm going to remind you guys of what the Cosmic Gateways Tarot looks like. But yeah, I would love to do that because here's the thing. I'm thinking about. Ain't no thinking about it. What I'm doing is sort of double duty on the cards. So Sundays usually take me a little bit longer because we're doing this through a live stream. So the whatever card I'm working on Sundays usually takes a little bit longer than it would be if I was like working through the week. So I'm like, okay, what if I work on one or two of the cards that I'm not streaming about, right, through the week? And I show you guys the process of that. Just me working, right? Just working through it. You guys get to watch, you guys get to work on whatever it is that you would like to work on. And then that helps me, you know what I mean? Stay on track. And then you guys can stay on track as well. I don't know. But that's what I'm thinking about. So I have been running this back and forth through my mind for a while now. And I think we might do that. I think we might do that. And just to see how it go, you know? And all right, so just gonna continue to work our way through this again because this is a card. All of this stuff, all of these details and things like that, you probably won't see a whole lot. Most people aren't gonna be paying attention to the pattern in her head wrap, but for me, it's super satisfying. I really enjoy the process of creating. I really do. Just sort of allowing yourself to be free in it. And like I said, this isn't necessarily perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? Because it's going to be on a 2 by 3 maybe inch card. Not really sure what it is in inches, but in millimeters, a little bit bigger than a 79 by. I think it is a 79 by 127 is the size that I landed on, something like that. So this is going to be relatively small. But again, adding these little details and finishing touches, I think helps out a lot. And then as I move my way across the page, what I will do is reevaluate what needs polishing, right? Again, because this is a secondary item, I don't really necessarily have to spend too much time making this perfect and pretty, anything like that. I just wanted to feel like a piece of cloth, right? And yeah, so we're just gonna do this. Again, none of this matters, right? But I do sort of enjoy this process, right? And it can be a little tedious depending on how much detail, but I think it makes a big difference, right? So I was looking at my Knight of Cups, I believe. I was looking at my Knight of Cups, and in my Knight of Cups, I remember spending quite a bit of time on his armor and thinking the same thing. I was like, this ain't gonna matter. But in the end, the final image of it, like it needed to be there, right? The level of extra detail that I took to get it to that point, it needed to happen. So that's sort of how I'm feeling with her head wrap, and I'll probably do the same thing with her mom's head wrap, and add some pattern and different color and stuff like that to this because it's fun. Really, it really and truly is. Again, like I just sort of saw myself doing some lines in her fabric, and so lines it shall be. And then I'll go back behind it because I have some overlap where, and I can do this a couple ways. I have some overlap where it sort of goes over what we've already established with the shadow lines. I can either erase it or I can just sort of color over it. In this case, I think I'm just going to go over lightly with the eraser, like so. That way we're still getting our definition and our differentiation between her folds, like this. And yeah, good. All right. Yeah, so thank you so much, Draw Sketchbook. I really, really, really appreciate that from you. I certainly do. So I think we're gonna try that. I don't know when, maybe this week, maybe next week, but we'll give it a go and do like a study work with me sort of situation so that we can hold each other accountable, right? You guys can see me studying or working or whatever it is I'm working on. And this could be for Cosmic Gateway Tarot or some of my client work. I might even share some of that. In 2021, I had wrote my first book, With the Libra Shadows, and I have been on and off working on reformatting it so that I can release it in a 5.5 by 8.5 format with a guided journal, attached to it, because it's a relatively short book. It's more of a workbook than it is a book. It is a 64-page book, and currently I have it printed and available on ebook at like an 8.5 by. So it's a huge book. Typically, when you are designing books and things like that, when you're writing and getting ready to format, the bigger the book is, the more it costs to print, right? And so even though writing and publishing and things like that is a labor of love, it's still a business. So you want to make sure that you can mitigate the costs as much as possible. So I wanted to re-release this book at a smaller size. So, and I'm trying to see if I have I don't. I was going to say, I'm trying to see if I have a 5.5 by 8.5 book, just so you can kind of see the difference in size. But I have been working on that. So maybe I can kind of share some of the process of that, doing it and formatting it as a journal in the back, as well as the informational part up front. Now, something else I'm noticing is just her head feels weird to me. So we're just going to take our eraser. Actually, I'm going to add a mask just in case I don't like it. And I'm just going to trim down her brow a little bit. Something like so that it's not so prominent. But yeah, I would love to do that and share with you guys some of the graphic design stuff that I do, some of the other illustration projects. And again, I'm doing double duty on these cards. So if we can do that, that would be awesome. All right. So now what the next thing I'm going to do is within this red head wrap, I'm actually going to add some of the blue from the background, just like we did in the skin, where we kind of added a little bit of the color from the background. And you can see that real well in our Queen of Wands. When you do that, just a little bit, you don't want it to be as strong as your background, but you do want to have an indication that it's a similar color, right? When you do that, it actually ties whatever it is you're drawing it to the actual scene, right? So that it feels like they're within this environment. So what I'm going to do is, on a new layer, just in case I mess this up, is I'm going to pick up just a little bit of this blue. I am going to also lightly swipe it, right? So this may not be the blue that I want when I first go into it, but it is going to give me a in-between color, right? So within your, if you're drawing on an iPad, if you're drawing on a screen display or like a graphics tablet, the harder you press on something, the more intense the color will be depending on the brush that you're using. So I'm going to just lightly pass over this, like, nope. Let's see, it's on the eraser. So I'm going to lightly brush over this, and it is going to reveal to me a color, right? And whatever that color is the color, what am I doing? Let's go up one. There we go. Okay, so that was too much, but it'll sort of reveal to me a color, and we'll use that color to add some ambiance to it. And I'm still messing up. Here we go. There we go. Now it's too dark. So what I'm going to do is just erase that and start over. But very, very lightly, like such. And then if I zoom in here, it's just a slight purplish color. I just want to add this sort of to the edge of our head wrap, maybe along the sides like this, because what that will do again is sort of reinforce our character into the scene. Now, I am seeing something that's giving me a little bit of a happy accident. Within our head wrap, there is this sort of light that's peeking through here where it's not all the same color. I like that. I think that works really well for what we have going on. And so we'll do this up a bit like so. And then we'll smudge it. And it's not going to make a huge difference, but it will help to anchor our character into the scene, right? So we want to add just a little bit of that color into the shadow side of her head wrap because it's a lot darker on this side of the canvas. All right. So let's see if it doesn't make, like I said, too much of a difference. But if we turn it off, it looks something like this. And if you turn it on, it looks something like this. So again, it kind of anchors our character into the scene. And her stripes look really good, right? It helps to sell this as an actual head wrap. And because we have those stripes, we can actually add that to some of the folds of her clothes, which I think we'll get into just a bit. So I had my original clothes layer. I'm going to go ahead and use the one that I duplicated. And just like with anything else, I'm going to lay in the shadows because that's just how I work, right? I like to lay in the shadows first. And then I'll lay in the highlights later. So I'm going to pick up some of the shadow color that we have over in our head wrap because we've already established that. And we also too want to keep in mind that our light is kind of coming from this direction. And we're just going to lightly draw this in, I think. Something like so. Is it showing up for me? Let's try it again. There we go. So yeah, we do want to keep in mind where our light source is going to be, right? And how that's going to affect our figure. But we also want to keep in mind where her body is creating a shadow, right? So the light from the little girl is going to create a shadow, but also because she has parts of herself that sits out, like her chest sits out from her stomach, it is going to create a shadow underneath her chest. So we want to keep that in mind. Also, the curve of her chest might indicate a shadow. I think in this case, because it's super close to the light, what we'll do is put the shadow on her sleeve just a bit. It's going to be very, very light, like so. And we can do the same thing for her apron whenever we get to that point. But for now, we're just going to add in some basic shadows and things like that. So want to add one here because her legs sort of go this way. And actually, because our light is coming from the little girl, all of this is probably going to be in shadow as well, or just slightly darker than her dress. It doesn't have to be a deep dark shadow or anything like that, but there will be something. we're just using our sketch lines as a guideline, right? So I think under here, she might be a little bit darker, so we can push this back a bit. And then here, we'll add that same dark color because it's underneath. So it's a little bit of the back side of her shirt. And then here, same thing, because this is sort of the back side of her tank top, or just sort of the top of her shirt. And then we're just going to add a little bit of that here. This will be a lot lighter because, again, it's closer to our light source. And if we wanted to stop here, we could, right? That gives us an idea of where our light and shadow is. And I'm just checking the second monitor. But we're not going to stop there. We're going to add some of this highlight color into certain areas of her shirt because, again, we want to sell the idea that our little girl is glowing. We want to sell the idea that she is the center of this stage, that she is the main character of this story, and that she is the sun in this solar system, right? But does it have to be super fancy? Again, I'm going to come behind that with my smudge brush. I don't necessarily have to have the texture in this but I like the painterly look, right? Like being able to see the line. Like so. And this being red really does help because, again, she's going to glow likely a hot pink. I don't know why hot pink is on my mind, but it is. So I think she's going to glow a little bit of a hot pink. So this will help us when we add those colors back into this. But for right now, we're just sort of laying out the basis of where her light and shadow is, and we'll make it look a little prettier, right, as we go. Right now, the main objective is just to get this bit of information in. Now, I know that her leg goes up here, so the light is sort of hitting because her leg is sticking out just a bit. And I'll go to my 3D model reference so that you guys can actually see what's going on underneath her dress. And we will actually use that as an indication for how to place the rest of her shadow. So for instance, this knee, I believe, is going to come up a little bit further like so. So we will move our highlight that way as well. All right, so this is the 3D model scene that I created here in Clip Studio. When I was doing this, I actually did place the cups in their hands, and like you can see the indication of the crown on the little girl's head, just so I can see where things are. And again, it looks like this knee comes up just a bit. So I want to make sure that we can see that. And if I just cranked up my sketch, it'll probably help help a good bit in that as well. But for the time being, we'll sort of use our light reference. Now, I'm not necessarily looking at this for a light reference. I am just sort of looking to see where things are on the page because what you will notice is even though I said that my little girl is the sun, the lights and the shadows within our characters don't necessarily substantiate that, right? So I do have to use a little bit of my imagination, but I do want to make sure that I know the placement of like the legs and the hips and things like that. And then from there, I can compensate for where I want the light to hit each of the characters. And I hope that makes sense. All right. I think it's going to auto save here for just a second. And that's a feature that I like of Clip Studio. It is going to save. It's going to save the work. It happens a little bit more frequently than I think I would like for it to, but it does come in handy. I think I've had Clip Studio crash on me twice in the 4 or 5 years that I've been working in. I think it's been about 5 years. And that backup was right there, right? I didn't really lose a whole lot of data. I think at the time it had just auto saved. And for whatever reason, whatever I was working on was a huge file, and that bad boy crashed. And I was able to sort of look up wherever the recovery file was, and there it was. So I really like that function. When I was working in Photoshop would crash and you would just lose whatever you've done, right? I remember doing a Batman piece for a comic book convention, and to this day, when I open up that file, and I can open up Photoshop files in Clip Studio, but to this day, when I open up that file, it is just corrupted. Right? So I do like that Clip Studio sort of has the artist in mind when it comes to making sure that you're able to access your work, even if it, crashes, or even if like the power goes out or something like that, which happens here where I live frequently, especially when there are storms and stuff like that. So that is very much appreciated. And if you are looking for a digital art program specifically for the computer, now I do know that they have the iPad version of this, but if you're working on a computer, I would highly recommend it for that. I have not used it on a iPad just yet, but I hear really good things. I think there are always going to be limitations just because the iPad is limited, just in terms of RAM and things like that compared to a computer. But I do believe that you can get some really really great results out of working in Clip Studio. So I think here in a minute, because it's starting to act up on me. What am I doing? Because I got the wrong tool selected. Okay. I think here in a bit we're going to call it, and I'm probably going to continue to work on this just a little bit today. It's again a super short live stream. I didn't really have any plans. Didn't have anything in particular I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to show you guys more of the progress of working on the Cosmic Gateway Tarot. So fingers crossed, next week we'll be starting on a new character. I'm I'm saving the little girl for last. No particular rhyme or reason. I probably should go ahead and do her just so to reinforce where the light is going to be coming from. I don't know. But the goal for next week is to have our or be ready for our next character. It'll either be the little girl or the mom, but I do want to have her sister completed. And I'm going to show you guys what we've done so far by deselecting this. I do have my sketch turned on so you guys can kind of see a little bit better what we're going for. But today we just sort of worked on her clothes a little bit. We did tighten up her face, made some adjustments to the size of her face using the mesh tool. We also made some adjustments to her head wrap. I'm gonna turn off this sketch just so you guys can see it. Made some adjustments to the sort of the shape and the size of her head wrap, and also added a pattern to it. I'm going to continue again to work on her clothes, just sort of off of live. I'm a little tired. I don't know if y'all can tell, but I am a little tired today. But I do plan on working on this. I want to have it done for next week so that we can move on to our next character and get on with some of these new cards. And thank you again, Draw Sketchbook, for saying that a secondary live stream might sound fun. I think I'm gonna give that a try. So look out if you're a subscriber. If you're not, be sure to make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Look out for an extra live stream either this week or next week. We're going to give it a go and play some music and just study and work together. And I'd love to hear in the chat when we do that what you guys are working on and what kind of projects or what kind of things you have going on in your life. I'd love to know more about it. If you have any questions or anything, please be sure to leave them in the comments below. And whether you're watching this live or the replay, I really appreciate you for being here for another live stream Paint With Me Sunday. We didn't get too much done today. Again, I'm just a little tired. I'm a little tired. It's just all it is to it. So hopefully next week again we'll have this character done so we can move on and I can show you guys how I will use my light source to sort of add more dimension to the characters that we've already done. All right, so I hope that you all have a wonderful, creative, and prosperous week, and until next time, peace.